Hi, folks. Welcome to the Sellosophy Podcast. Carlos Garcia here, and I'm excited today to have a really wonderful guest who I now call a friend and someone who has played a great role not only in my growth as an entrepreneur, but also a huge movement called Exactly What to Say. Today, we are joined by Claire Dowdall. She is the director of brand for Exactly What to Say and supports Phil M. Jones with a thought leader in the space of communication, influence, and impact, and shaping the growth of one of the world's most influential communication brands. Through her work as a speaker, she helps leaders and experts build professional brands through the conversations that define their influence and works with a global community of certified guides, such as me, bringing that message to the industry. So, hi, Claire. Thanks
Hey,
for being here.
thanks for having me. I'm excited.
So I know that that's not the only superpower that you have. I get to have the opportunity to not only be friends with you on the socials, but you are based out of the UK. So although we're not friends that hang out and grab a pint, as they say over there, we get to virtually see each other's world and share. But from time to time, we get to meet in person, whether it's in New York with the Exactly What to Say community. But I also get to see you. You're a avid power lifter. And I know that we share the passion of loving music, and from time to time we've been planning to do karaoke together. So those are just some things we have pending before we jump
Yeah,
into the good stuff.
one day it will happen. I just know it, and it will be beautiful when it does.
That's awesome. Claire, for the benefit of the audience, is there anything else that I may have missed from your introduction that would be helpful for the audience to know about our conversation today?
Um, it's difficult to say. I think you've pretty much summed it up really well. And if anyone's interested, my background is in marketing. I've been in marketing for over 20 years for various types of industries and products. In the last sort of decade or so, I've been more in the training and IP space, the educational business space, and worked with a few thought leaders. So I've been in this kind of area for a little while, but I've worked with Phil for nearly 10 years now, which is madness.
Yeah, it's
And I
incredible.
tell you, you learn a lot from observing somebody like that.
Absolutely. And it's incredible how, I mean, I've only had the opportunity to be part of this community for a couple of years now and seeing how fast it has evolved in 2 years. I'm guessing that in 10 years, you've seen even a lot more. But I want to start from the beginning of you being part of this movement. How did you meet Phil?
Well, isn't that an interesting story? And isn't it always? So 10 years ago in January, I at the time was in network marketing for a company called Forever Living Products, who, you may have heard of. And I was part of a training program towards a particular milestone in the plan. And Phil was the facilitator of a series of training, in-person training events that I attended. And true to form, I was the person who was pick me. And I was, sharing my story with him, and he got to know what I did. And at the time, he was looking for some marketing support, so he got to know that I did marketing. And a few months later, we started working together in a very fast moving, interesting community that we built on Facebook, which was for network marketers. It was a month long video a day guided challenge, which in 2016 was quite a new idea. And I helped him to manage that. As you can imagine, there were 2,500 people in there, and they all had a lot of questions. And we built that and carried it on for 8 months in the end into a monthly membership. So that was a really interesting experience. And as Phil's business has evolved, and that involved him moving from the UK to the US, beginning his speaking career just concentrated to North America. I saw his evolution over to the US, and when he turned his little set of magic words that he'd taught for years into a little book in 2018,
Right.
I was witness to the development of that. And that was a really interesting process in how that catapulted his career through taking that little bit of IP and building his credibility as a speaker through having a book, And he had written other books, but this was the one that was going to really sort of cement his reputation. And in 2022, that's correct, January 2022, the guides program was still kind of an idea and an experiment. And the first 6 people that attended a certified guide training had the pleasure of having me and my colleague Nathan, who you know well also, in the room virtually. So I wasn't in New York, they were in New York. And that was when we decided that this is something that has so much potential for expanding the message, for reaching more people without Phil physically having to reach more people, get on more planes, spend time away from family, and actually see this work expand and gain momentum. And the Certified Guides program was the way to do that. And as you know, I say the rest is history. It still feels like the present. It still feels like the beginning of something that can go so much further. But 3.5 years later, we have well over 50 certified guides, and it just keeps getting bigger and more exciting, which is very cool.
Yeah, and every time there's something new that comes out, I just think about just like the brain that goes behind that, and you not only has the brand evolved, so your role has evolved, right? You're the director of brand, where you started helping Phil with some marketing stuff. You had needed to see, the grow for the need of this, like the world needs this, right? The world needs to improve communication. The world understands that every relationship can be broken or can be amplified by the way that we use our words and the way that we communicate, not only in sales and leadership, but in personal relationships. And there must have been a moment, and I think it sounds like around 2022 is what you said, right? Where you must have all gotten together and said, okay, we gotta really seriously think about how can we make this not just a little book, not just a couple of talks here and there, but how do we amplify this and make it a movement? Because there can only be one Phil, but exactly what to say has sort of evolved into its own thing, right? And so
Yeah.
I guess when was that moment, and what did you all need to do to be able to separate that while honoring both ideas, where Phil can still share his brilliance, point of view, perspective, and some of this content that is just so powerful, so beautifully packaged, but then still allowing people like us, sort of as folks who are also passionate about helping the world, become better through communication, honor the work, but while yet still we can still share our own original thought, idea, and perspective. So kind of separating the movement from the originator, the creator of the movement.
I think it's very difficult to separate them completely, because obviously it's Phil's brain, it's Phil's work that he's developed, it's his IP that has just evolved through his own experiences. But you hit a point as a personal brand, as the deliverer of the work as well as the creator of the work, where you cannot scale any further unless you build a course, for example. And one thing that Phil always said is that he didn't want to build courses. He didn't want to become a course-related business. So given that we are a communication brand, given that this brand is based on and built on conversations, the idea was for it to expand through people, through human connection, which of course is like at the very heart of what the brand is. And that was true to Phil's values. Start making your conversations count is a key message. Change your words, change your world is a key message. All of these things are to do with humans taking words and turning them into opportunity, into the results that they want in their lives. And you cannot do that just on a screen, just on a step-by-step in a course. So as the brand has grown, obviously we know personal brands are huge. They are also where the work originates with one person. They are the amplifier. They are the basis of building a brand alongside. So exactly what to say could not exist without Phil having a brand that is growing. So we've had to grow the two together. And that doesn't mean that we are reliant on him as a founder, as a creator forever. But it does mean that we know that in order for the movement of exactly what to say to grow, we also need to continue to grow Phil's brand, grow his influence, for him to be that sort of fuel on the fire that grows exactly what to say. And that has worked really well. And we expect that to evolve over time. And he loves getting involved. He has a particular passion for video and what we're doing on YouTube, and he loves to do that. But his best place is to be on stages in front of people and in conversation with people, opening doors, creating opportunities in, the best way that he knows to use his skills. But the connection between him and the brand, to me, is the certified guides, because they are the deliverers of the message that allow it to expand to more human beings face to face, and through really encapsulating the passion that Phil has for the brand, but making it fit with what individuals want to achieve. So, for example, where you have taken the work and you have almost translated it into your world. Accountants now understand the context behind the work, because you, as somebody who is operating in that space, is able to take it and translate it and give it a new lens. And that's something that Phil can't do individually. Firstly, because he is one human. And secondly, because he's not in every single industry every day. As much as he is extremely knowledgeable about a lot of industries, he's not in them every day. He's not able to build those individual relationships. Whereas when you have 50 or two, we're only planning to have a maximum of 100 certified guides, but still 100 people who are out there sharing a similar message and showing even more people how it can relate to them, that's where it has sort of real power. And then if they can relate that back to one person who is the creator founder, who they can still see visibly standing on stages, creating content, sharing what he's doing and how he's working, that helps everybody.
That's huge. There's so many great points you talked about that, but I'm going to tag along something you were saying towards the end, which inspired a thought, and which was the ability to give an industry expert this freedom to grab the work while honoring it, and then customize the context that goes inside that. This is kind of one of the brilliant things about the brand, is how many different modalities you could do with this. So there's this idea where you can grab in a universal book where the general population can relate to examples in personal life, in leadership, and in selling or commercial, trying to convince people to buy products or services. And now we can grab this and we can now say to an industry like in real estate or in accounting or in a different professional discipline, and say, we're going to grab the same principles, but we're going to change the examples into the book so it feels more personal to you. And I find that to be like such a brilliant Swiss Army knife, concept, where you can grab this brand, stick with the principles, and then contextualize it to what's personal to someone else. And I've got like a bunch of products here, right? And like how cool it is that you can now build something like role play cards, so now people can use it in the form of a game to improve their communication. And I know that Phil's brain also brings other things like his philosophies, or teaching people that don't know how to sell, or what's behind you as well, right? Or like if someone wants to plan goals, and I'm a huge fan of just all the ideas and concepts. And I guess where I want to get to this point is, we've seen that success working really, really well. But there's also like a lot of risks of when someone wants to launch a brand and they want to say, I want to go in all these directions. I guess, like, what advice would you have for a thought leader? Let's say for myself, if I were to build my own personal brand and I want to productize my ideas, right? And there could be successful ways to execute that, and there could be pitfalls. I guess from your experience, what are some things that have flopped maybe when you tried to do within EWTS, or other ideas and like lessons from that other folks that are looking to say, how can I grab this really core idea and bring it to modalities, but not, not fail miserably?
Let me have a little think on what has flopped, but I want to first come to a point about what makes it work. And that is, and I'm sure you would agree, the reason that Phil's work works so well, the reason that Exactly What to Say works so well, is that it's rooted in principles. So as much as you can pick up the book and you can say, hey, it's a little book, it's full of 23 sets of words, and that's that. Well, we know that it's not just about 23 sets of words and, hey, go say them in some conversations today. It's rooted in principles, which are the 4 cornerstones of conversational excellence. And we have the curiosity, empathy, courage triangle that we also talk about. And these form the sort of the bedrock of the work. If you just build, oh, I'm going to have my own version of the 23 or 32 sets of words, and I'm going to put them in a book and I'm going to sell that and that's going to work, without any underlying principles, that work becomes very narrow. But when you root it in principles, it becomes almost infinitely broad, because you can apply it to any situation. You can root it back to something bigger than just the words as the example. So I believe that's what makes it really powerful. That's what makes it applicable to so many different industries, to so many different sort of modalities, to so many different contexts. The other
That's a
part
great point.
yeah. So the other part of that, if you're looking to do this yourself, if you had a body of work, some IP, if you had a book, and you wanted to achieve a similar amount of scaling the brand, it's remembering that you cannot be everywhere at once. You as a human being are not scalable, aside from being tech enabled. So we know we can scale ourselves using tech, using AI, but really this brand is about human connection. We didn't want to lose the soul of that, which is why having an army of people is really important. And that's why I kind of will get on my soapbox about how empowering people to be messengers of your brand is one of the best strategies you could possibly have. If you can find people who understand and are passionate, are connected to your vision for your brand, and you can give them everything they need to go out there and talk about what you do, to share your message and put it into their own context, that's extremely powerful. So I would consider, firstly, is if you're going to take a piece of work and you want to scale it, you have to think about what makes it scalable. And if you can start with people, that's great. I'm not saying it's the easiest way, but I think in a sort of AI world, the more you can tap into human connection and the face-to-face and the empower people through conversations, you have a huge advantage over those who are relying on automation and that sort of thing.
That's great. Can I ask something on that real quick?
Yeah.
As you think about your flops, you can write them down, because that could be a bonus, or we could put that at the end. Because you inspired another idea here, and I think about what you were saying earlier with, everything's rooted in principles, and like in order for branding to be successful, there needs to be, and I think of one word, like great brands are consistent with something. What are the things that need to be consistent? And I'll maybe clue you in on one thing, right? Because I think one of the parameters that you give, certified guides like ourselves is like, yes, we can represent the brand, but we have to follow brand guidelines, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's not like I'm going to grab Exactly What to Say and change the color to my brand color. So there are certain limitations where there are things we still need to be consistent with, so the brand shows up correctly, consistently, well represented. So what tips do you have for folks around consistency in successfully amplifying and growing a brand, so that it doesn't, the inconsistency might break trust, or just not, might lose credibility, right? So
Yeah. I think one of the challenges we have had, and this sort of relates to your point, first of all, is what do you do when people start to either copy or use your work without permission? I think that's quite a big topic. And The first sort of thing that we have learned is you have to learn what the balance is between giving people freedom and protecting your brand. And I like to look at it as the phrase freedom within fences. So you create your fences, but you don't make people feel restricted. So in terms of when certified guides are out there sharing the work and they want to do it with integrity, they want to do it in the best way, they want to make sure that they are honouring the brand, honouring the work, then that's exactly how we would want it to be, is that they feel empowered and they feel like they have freedom and creativity, but they also understand what not to do or what might not be appropriate. So that's one side of it. The other side of it is that there will be people who, as Phil would describe it, karaoke the work. And sometimes, mostly, it's with good intent. Mostly it's that they love the work and they just want to share it with more people and they're really enthusiastic. But they don't necessarily have the authority and the permission to do that. Or they're just unclear on what they're allowed to do. And I think when you talk about what hasn't worked, and it's not necessarily what hasn't worked, it's a lesson that we've learned. Right. And that is that when you have IP out there, you're playing a game of what we refer to as whack-a-mole, where you will find it pop up. You will find copied versions, you will find audio versions, you will find people creating their own events called Exactly What to Say on Eventbrite or something coming up on YouTube, and we're having to constantly monitor that. And you can spend your whole life policing that, or you can be grateful that the work is out there. And it's sometimes really hard to find that balance. And I know somebody very recently has had his entire course essentially, I'd say, ripped off by two people who have very large audiences and they're profiting off his work. And he had to make the decision, do I want to go all in and get lawyers and go down the whole legal process route, or do I let it go and build something else or build my own on my own plot of land and just let them get on with it? And he's decided to do the latter. And he said, I'm going to take my work, I'm going to build something new with it. That's a really hard thing, because when you've built something yourself from scratch out of your own brain with your own experience, you've delivered it multiple times, you will get very protective, and that's understandable because it's your baby. But the trouble with information is that it is a commodity. It is available everywhere, which means it's not always safe. And as much as you want to create some rules around it, it doesn't mean that people are going to follow it. So the way that we like to look at it, the attitude that we like to have is, let's just empower people to share the work and enjoy the fact that more and more people are learning about it. And hope that while we're taking other actions, like we're building content, we're being visible, we're creating value, that they will come back to us, they will find us. And if they want to work with us, then that's when it will happen. So that's, I think, an important area.
Yeah, there's something interesting about branding that I scratch my head around, which on one end, it sounds like, for your brand to survive, we have to be open and nimble to evolve. One, from the mistakes that we make. Two, from when the work is so good, other people will try to rip it off in one way or the other, because it will just exist. Unfortunately, some people might not have either the will to try to create something on their own. So the easiest thing to do is just use it themselves and monetize of it. And that's unfortunate. And you can choose from a mindset standpoint. It's like, I'm going to just go after everyone. You can use all that energy towards that. Or you could see it as a gift, as an opportunity to say, how can I evolve, be bigger thinker, maybe I be more proactive, get my legal things in place, build my parameters, my guardrails, just protect that the originality of my work. There's that, right? And having to evolve. And then I see this thing, which is kind of like strangely the opposite thing. And maybe it's a valid, or maybe it's not a valid example, but you saw the whole scandal about Crackle Barrel logo, right?
Yes.
yeah, the Cracker Barrel logo was like it's the original thing. And Cracker Barrel maybe try to do this thing where like we're gonna change it up, we're gonna try to evolve. And people were like, no, what are you doing? We love the old logo. From your point of view, and I'm putting you on the spot here, why did people choose not to evolve with the brand when they wanted to be more modern? What was something there that they did really well that made people want to just say, don't change anything?
So it's not a brand that I had heard of before until this came up. But I think what they will have done a really good job of is building a brand that's rooted in traditional values, in the tradition and the backstory of the business, of the brand. And that is what people will be loyal to, just that. And when they see that logo, they feel a connection, and probably they have a connection to a memory in their childhood of when they first saw it, or an experience of some time that they spent with their grandparents, and that was part of it, and they feel emotionally connected. And that's an extremely powerful brand building
Mm-hmm.
sort of strategy. Not that they necessarily set out to do that, but that's what they created. And in rebranding or adjusting the logo, which wasn't hugely different, but it took out the detail and it made it just different to what they're used to, they forgot why people loved the brand and were loyal to it. And they just lost their way, they lost their connection. And I think that was a similar thing. There was a similar sort of discussion around the rebrand of Jaguar. Did you see that?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And Jaguar's, again, very traditional. It's a very traditional brand. We're used to seeing the logo as it is. And they come up with this like ultra modern font that just, it's like, no, that's not what it is. It's supposed to be traditional. It's supposed to be very British. It's supposed to be rooted in its, heritage. It's like, we didn't want it to evolve. We didn't want it to become modern. We wanted to keep it as it was. Did they actually ask the people who were loyal to the brand what they thought before they just relaunched it? Or did someone come along and just make a decision? And I think that's such a mistake. If you lose that connection with A, the people that are loyal to your brand, and B, how they really feel about it, it's a massive difference. And I think that's something as we grow the Exactly What to Say brand, as anyone's growing their brand, is that if you lose that sight, that connection with the people and how they connect to the brand, that's what matters. It kind of doesn't matter what you think. You might have your opinion, you might think, but I really want to evolve it. But why?
Yep.
Is that just selfish?
I think what people also forget is that, and this is like an interesting fun fact, but also a real fact, and this has been ingrained in my brain ever since, is that since we were kids, we can recognize by the age of 7 or 8 anywhere between 200 to 300 logos just by seeing it. And I can prove that because my 5-year-old nephew last week came over and we were doing a bunch of stuff, but we put on YouTube, recognize this logo, recognize this flag. And all the car logos, literally, you see it, Mercedes, Audi, BMW, and you're just like, wow. And I think about Cracker Barrel, to your point, although you didn't grow up with it, I did. And actually, when I first moved to the States, kind of in the mid-90s, like one of the first restaurants I ever went to in the United States of America was Cracker Barrel. And it was just like, wow, like to your point, the feeling that I had, going into the restaurant, everything felt traditional, right? Even though it was in South Florida, it felt like a southern, type of environment, the food, the people, the treatment. It was a feeling. And it's almost like when someone's robbing you of that feeling, it's like they're robbing you of that sentimental value. It's like, when our parents, I don't know if you've gone through this, but when your parents move out of the house and they need to clear a couple of old memories of things, it's like they're attached to that sentimental value. And so with branding, there could be a double-edged sword, like what happened with Jaguar and what happened with Cracker Barrel. So I think there's some definite lessons to be learned, but it's also a testament to saying what a great job, the brand had done, not just with the logo, but with the feeling that it created through the way that they lived through, the brand, and they represented that brand. And so just an interesting lesson.
Yeah, and
I
I
want,
think
okay.
that the stories that people have, that everyone will have a story that relates to a time that they were there, a time that they enjoyed with their family. And like we know that like powerful brands are built on stories. And if you forget what your stories are, you forget that connection, then what do you even have? Like you can create new ones, sure, but the ones that people have in their minds and the connection that they have to the brand that way, you're helping people to create memories and experiences that they will remember and they will retell in the future. And that's why I think that brand has such longevity. The fact that you have a memory back in the 90s and the brand still exists today shows that they need to not, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, I think is the big lesson here. And I would hope that as any brand evolves, there will be times where you think, is this getting boring? Are people sick of hearing this? Do we need to change this up? And it comes back to, if you've got something worth sharing that's really valuable, people will not get sick of hearing you say the same phrase or hear you referring back to the same principles. They'll actually thank you for reminding them that sometimes they need to go back to basics, sometimes they need to remember these things. And when people think, oh yeah, but I say that phrase all the time, or whenever I'm on stage, it's kind of the same speech, but like obviously I'll adapt it to the audience. But are people sick of hearing this? Because, well, actually, if you're standing on stage, you're the only one that's seen it or been there every single time. So of course that's going to come up in your head. But the principles and phrases and the things that people connect to, they will be timeless. And I think a lot of people worry about people getting bored of the same thing. But I don't believe that. But I understand why some people do. And I understand why some people think, I need to change it up, I need to evolve, I need to create some new material. And sure, there will
Right.
be new material, but you've got to create it based on what the market's telling you, not on, oh, I think probably it's a bit boring now, or maybe I'm a bit bored of it. That's another story is, you don't ever want to get bored of your own content. But
Sure.
if it's still working, if it's still, attracting audiences and people are still loving it, then don't be afraid to repeat that post on Instagram with that one phrase on it that you're like, I say that all the time. Are people sick of hearing it? No, they love it. They want to hear it again. They associate it with you. It reminds them, oh, I remember when he said that on stage and it really connected with me. Or I remember when I went to that event and I had that experience. It reminds me of when I had that conversation with that person. It's
Right.
that anchoring.
Yeah.
So
It's the
brand
feeling, the human
evolution,
connection.
yeah,
Yeah.
I believe that brands should evolve, but I think you have to do it really intentionally and make sure that the people if you're building a movement, that the movement comes with you, that you're not trying to build alongside it, around it, ahead of it, but it goes along at the same time. And that's why that by building something like the Certified Guides program, we're not just building one brand, we're helping people build multiple brands on multiple journeys. And that's what creates a movement. So if you've got a brand where you're creating experiences like a restaurant and dining experiences, how do you enable people to create their own journeys and their own stories that make them feel a part of yours? And if you go off and you're rebranding without having listened and connected with them and gathered the stories from them, then you're going to miss the mark.
It's a great point. Speaking of that, there's an exercise that I did in my first year, becoming a certified guide, what I found to be so powerful. And I wonder if I could maybe put you on the spot a little bit, but I'm talking about the business of you and the 9-box planning without going too into depth, but on a very high level. I found that to be extremely beneficial for me to really understand how to introspectively understand who I am and who I want to be, But could you share kind of high level what the business of you concept is and why these principles are so important when we think about elevating our personal brand and how it helps us really prioritize where to focus
Yeah.
on building a personal brand?
So the business of you, it's my jam within the exactly what to say work. And that is visibility, credibility, authenticity, and availability are the 4 pillars of the business of you. And without one of them, you might struggle to build a strong and consistent brand. Without 2 of them, you definitely will. If you imagine it like a stool, 4-legged stool will be solid, 3-legged stool, still going to stand, 2, and it's falling over. So you can't have a really powerful personal brand and reputation as, in particular, in the expert space, but also as somebody who is looking to represent their brand. So let's take the example of an accountant. And they run their own firm, they have several people, but what they're deciding to do is they're deciding to step out and start being more visible and start creating opportunities through building their own reputation. And that isn't just about visibility, that's just one quarter of it. But the purpose of the business of you is to create that holistic view of what a personal or professional brand is. And that can apply not just to, you don't just have to be the company owner, you could have a team of people and you're empowering them to go out and build your brand externally, to create opportunity, to share their knowledge, to build some thought leader content, to go networking, to be posting on LinkedIn and all of those sorts of things. So first of all, yes, you need to be visible, because without visibility, who even knows who you are? And within that, I like to advocate for people to build something with consistency in mind. Because not everybody has time to build a massive sort of social media following, be putting out content all the time. So building it with sustainability in mind, where you know that you can consistently deliver this type of content or be in this type of situation, that is the key with visibility. So second one, credibility, is in many people's minds gathering testimonials. And I have a bit of a bee in my bonnet about gathering testimonials, because quite often in testimonials it's just everyone saying how brilliant you are, and after a while some people, when they're reading it, could think they've just asked someone to say how brilliant they are. How authentic is this? What does this mean for me? Because it seems to be all about them. So I like to sort of twist that round and say, what if we relabeled testimonials or rebranded them as impact stories? So what stories do you want people to be telling about the impact that working with you or your company had on them? And that is way more powerful than a testimonial. And that's where credibility doesn't just come from having the correct letters after your name, the correct qualifications, having a great website and all the things that make you look flashy and shiny and clever. But credibility is about trust. And the best way I know to build trust is by creating stories told by others to others. And that's when someone will say, actually, they do know what they're doing and I can relate to that. And that connects us on to authenticity. And authenticity is about, well, are you being real? Are you telling the truth? Those 2 key things. And I like to sort of describe it as putting it through a filter. You could call it like a resonance filter. And that filter basically says, am I actually being me? Am I showing up in a way that feels authentic? Do I feel like I'm putting on an act? Or is this actually what I would say? And am I speaking in a way that's going to connect to others? And obviously, telling stories within that is the best way to connect to others. So you're not just gathering stories, but you're also telling stories in a way that connects your message to human. So your human experience to someone else's human experience. Or you retell a human experience that's happened as a result of what you do. And then the final one is availability. So this is probably the one that people miss the most, is that they actually forget to tell people how they work with you or connect with you. because they feel like they should be delivering value all the time. So if we use the example of posting content, yes, you're showing up, you're being visible, you're gathering impact stories, you're being authentic, you're telling stories, but you forget to tell people how they can connect with you, reminding them that they could sign up for your newsletter, reminding people of, you actually could give me money for this, or you could come work with us, or maybe you could become a client, and this is how. And then you make it easy for them to just take that first step. And it's okay to do that. Obviously, you don't want to do that all the time. So if you're posting on LinkedIn, you don't want to be saying at the end of every post, come work with me, come work with me, come work with me. You have to build trust. But don't forget to do it. And don't forget to make it really easy. So that's the business of you is all four of those things working in harmony. And you won't be perfect in each of them all the time. It's a balancing act. It's like saying, there is no such thing as work-life balance. There might be moments where there's a balance, but it's always forever moving. And you're always looking at, in what area am I falling down right now that I could do better, and keep iterating as you go.
Yeah, that was really well defined. And I think about it as these are core components to help us stay just focused on the core activities that need to be done as you're looking to build that personal brand. And I definitely, put it to work, and I've seen tremendous results from it in building the credibility, doing the visibility part, which is, doing a podcast with you. That's a visibility activity. And these are things to think about, like having a website, writing an article, whatever way that you could share your ideas, your thought leadership, your content, ways for people to see who you are, what you're about, what are you an expert at, and then how can they work with you if they happen to be someone that feels connected to the value that you can bring, and they could see a benefit in potentially working with you. But again, I mean, getting case studies, testimonials, impact stories, as you mentioned, which is trust that's being transferred from a third party, like that's one of the highest credibility building activities. And so I think after I did that activity, it just shifted my entire perspective on, like, okay, it gave me much more clear direction. Like, how do I build myself? How do I think about me? So I thought those pillars were absolutely brilliant, and you explained it beautifully.
Thank you. So powerful. And I also like to just mention, it's not just necessarily about a personal brand. Even as a leader, and how you work with your team is like, how are you being visible to your team? How are you demonstrating credibility to the people that you're leading? How are you being authentic in your interactions with them? And, do you have an open door policy? Are you inviting them to, are you being approachable? Are you allowing people to connect with you and share things with you that they may have felt less confident to? So I think that there are so many ways that the business of you, or that model, could be applied, not just to someone growing a personal brand as an expert or a business owner, but also someone who's looking to build that strong reputation within their role as a leader. I think that's a key way of using it as well that I really love.
That's huge. You definitely scratched my brain on that. I didn't even think of it from that view. Like a leader building their brand as a leader, you can use these same principles, which goes back to the earlier point. If you operate on principles, the consistency behind the success that will be even better than you just throw a bunch of random tactics without real clear direction or foundational principles. And with Reframe, the brand that Hector and I lead, we have principles as well. Like, we operate under a manifesto. There's like these 12, 13 things that we operate under these rules. No matter what we do, if it's not that, just like a company, when they have core values, like if we're not grounded on our core values, like who we are, what are we about? Just yesterday I was doing a workshop with an accounting firm, and we spent a lot of work on helping the team decide, what words do customers use when they describe working with us?
Yeah.
Like, how do we want them to feel when they're done working with us? What behaviors or actions do we want to represent? And they would come up with words like transparency, reliability. And so, like, if we operate under those core values, those foundational principles, then everything else can be universally applied. And I think that's beautiful. And that's a huge part of the branding.
Yeah, for sure. And it makes everything so much easier. It makes decision making so much easier when you've got something to just anchor it to, and like as I described earlier, a filter through which to put it. It's like, okay, we're making a decision, we're deciding whether to do this tactical thing over here, or apply this messaging, or create this product. Okay, does this actually fit with these foundational principles or these core values? When it comes to a brand, obviously, you don't just want to be noisy for the sake of noisy, or, create an audience for the sake of creating an audience. It's what actually is this doing for the brand? How is this deepening the connection between what we're doing and the people who are experiencing it? And you can't go far wrong if you have that approach. And I did a post about this the other day. I think that you saw it, and it was about the strength of a brand is built on the experiences that you create for people. And if you can root it back even just to that one point, or just have a little think about a decision you're making, a campaign you're about to run, an article you're about to write, are you creating a positive experience for the people that you wish to impact? And how can you make that even better? How can you keep adding excellence to it? I think that's something that is, if there was one filter, that would be it.
That's awesome. Claire, I don't want to hold you up too much, but I have one last question. If I was a thought leader or an organization thinking about bringing you in to speak to my team or my organization, what would be something that the group would walk away with? Like, it's just an example of a core objective or an outcome or takeaway.
I would say if I were to pick one objective, it would be obviously clarity. And that clarity comes from really understanding the why of building a personal, professional brand, and that your strategy for it always comes back to being yourself, telling the truth, being real, and also acting in the interests of the bigger brand that you might represent. And that's a worry for individuals, and it can be a worry for organizations, that if I empower people to go out and build personal brands, will they just leave? Will they just go and build their own company? And I would like to challenge that and say, well, what if they don't? And what if they help you build yours? And I think that's something to really think about. So a sort of journey, a framework for how to do that and feel confident that it's actually going to meet business objectives and meet your own career objectives at the same time.
I love that. I think like that coexistence of like, I'm Carlos Garcia and I'm also an exactly what to say certified guide, and both can coexist.
Absolutely.
And be okay with being my authentic self. I'm a musician, guitarist, songwriter, just like you're Claire, director of brand, and exactly to say, but you're so Claire, the super awesome power lifter, and you courageously and bravely just post your jam. This is who you are, right? And being sort of unapologetic about it. And that's okay. And both can coexist.
It's liberating, it's freedom, and there's no greater freedom than the freedom to just be yourself at all times.
Right on. Claire, this has been a really awesome conversation. I really appreciate you joining. If anyone wanted to connect with you online, what's the best way for someone to connect with you?
Best way to connect with me is on LinkedIn. You just look for linkedin.com.
I'll put it in the notes. Yeah.
And I'm just Claire Dowdall on there. Look for the orange heart.
Perfect. Well, thank you for joining today. I appreciate it. Look forward to hanging out with you soon. And thanks everyone for tuning in. And for more information, check out the show notes. Till next time.